attacks. These air marshals operate in anonymity and mostly under their own supervision. And most of them do a good and decent job serving a patriotic service and doing so with great integrity. But when any member of this highly trained workforce veers away from the core mission, they put the nation's air security at risk. So why are we here today? Unfortunately, there have been some very high-profile scandals. The former FAMS director, Federal Air Marshal Service Director Robert Bray, retired in 2014 after being investigated for his entanglement in an alleged operation to acquire guns for officials' personal use. In 2012, Federal Air Marshals assigned to protect commercial flights across the United States were pulled from their assigned flights so they can meet on sexual rendezvous. Most recently, there's an allegation of air marshals disguising themselves as pornography producers, hiring prostitutes, and using their government-issued phones and other assets to film sexual encounters. Fortunately, these people based in Chicago had been evidently engaged in these activities. These are all ongoing investigations. There's also reportedly major alcohol abuse within the Federal Air Marshal system. But this story, this hearing is really not only intended to address those problems, but it's at least been our purview in the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, at least on our side of the aisle, that Director Allison, who's here today, and Ms. Brooke, have taken some pretty strong and decisive action. You know, through the course of the first 8 months that I've been chairman of this committee, we have heard a series of different agencies that have come before us and complained that they couldn't take decisive action. Think of the DEA, the Secret Service, the EPA. We've had some very, very salacious misconduct from some of their employees, and yet they weren't fired. They weren't put on administrative leave. They didn't get their security clearances revoked. We had a situation, like I said, with the Secret Service. Within the same department and agency, Homeland Security, why weren't those people's security clearance revoked? But what I found in the interaction, with great concern, hearing about how maybe flight schedules have been manipulated and sexual misconduct going on and inappropriate behavior, really thought that what we were going to find is yet another agency that wasn't dealing with that in an appropriate way. Now, there's more to learn. We're not giving them a free pass. I'm not saying it's the absolute model for where we should be going, but I have been very impressed in the openness and transparency within the Federal Air Marshal system, their interaction with our committee, and what they did in a very decisive and swift manner. So every hearing we do, we're not calling for the resignation of everybody, a lot of them, but in some cases we find something that's actually working well. Because there are misdeeds going on, there are things that are going awry, and we want to learn what they're doing in order to rectify that. So I have the deepest respect for the loyal men and women who work under Director Allison's leadership. They bear a tremendous responsibility. There are some things in this hearing that I'm sure members of the public and members of this committee would be interested in hearing. Some of that is classified. I will interrupt, and I will not tolerate anybody who's trying to get specific details about the number of air marshals, which flights are they on, which flights are they not on, and how they make such selection. That would be reserved for a classified setting, not appropriate in an open hearing. We do not need to tell the terrorists who they are, what they're doing, how they do it. Suffice it to say, I have reviewed some materials that would lead me to believe, A, this service is needed, there is a threat, and it gives me comfort to know that they're on top of it. Now, I worry about what they don't know and who might be on an airplane or getting through security, and that's there are a host of other things that we should do, and Mr. Mike has done great work on this, the security badges and getting through and what the whole TSA is doing and not doing, a totally different subject. But let's talk about the good, the bad, and ugly of what's happening here with the Federal Air Marshals, and let's also give some credit where credit's due when we do root out something that's wrong and dealing with that in a swift manner. So with that, I will yield my time and now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I do thank you for holding this hearing on allegations of misconduct by employees of the Federal Air Marshal Service. And let me say this from the outset, Mr. Chairman. I agree with you with regard to Administrator Allison. It's so often people in his position seem to skirt around matters when there is wrongdoing in their department. But as you have said to me, both privately and now publicly, he has taken on his responsibilities very diligently and carefully, and has done everything in his power to address the issues at hand, and we do appreciate that. Our committee has been looking into two separate cases. In February, press reports alleged that a TSA employee used her position to gain access to personnel files and flight schedules to identify air marshals she wanted to date. According to these press reports, flight schedules were changed to facilitate, and I quote, sexual trysts, end of quote. On March 2nd, Chairman Chaffetz and I, along with Representatives Micah, Duckworth, DeSantis, and Lynch, wrote to Secretary Johnson at the Department of Homeland Security with regard to this incident. A second incident was reported publicly just yesterday. According to an article by the Associated Press, and I quote, 2 federal air marshals have been suspended amid allegations they hired prostitutes overseas and recorded a sexual encounter with a government-issued device. Obviously, if these allegations are accurate, they are completely inappropriate for anyone, let alone air marshals, charged with securing our skies. These employees must be held accountable, and I know they will be. From our perspective here in Congress, we want to ensure the integrity of the ongoing investigations and disciplinary actions in these cases. So we cannot discuss some of this information publicly. The last thing we want to do is compromise these ongoing investigations. Director Allison, we understand that you and Ms. Book may not be able to testify about certain details of these cases at today's hearing. We fully understand that, and as the Chairman said, I know that he will diligently guard against questions that might go into to those issues. Despite these limitations, however, I want to thank you very much for the detailed briefing you gave to me and to the Chairman last night about these incidents. Based on the limited information the committee has obtained to date, it appears that managers at your agency have been acting appropriately, using existing legal authorities to investigate and take action on these cases. The Chairman has also made clear that he acknowledges the positive steps you have taken to date. And I applaud you for what you said to us just yesterday, that you want to make it possible so that you want to create an atmosphere where these things don't happen, so you don't have to come behind and clean up a mess. Those aren't your words, those are my words. Our broad interest is in ensuring that employees who are alleged to have engaged in misconduct are investigated promptly and fairly. We want bad employees to be rooted out as quickly as possible because they give a bad name to the vast majority of federal workers who devote their entire careers and lives to this nation. And one of the other things that you told us is that you want to make sure that your agency has the very best and has the very best lives up to the highest of standards. And we appreciate that. We also want to protect the rights of employees accused of misconduct to ensure that they have due process to defend themselves against accusations that are false. Director Allison has already taken several steps to improve this process, and I believe the Oversight Committee can also help. For example, my staff members have been working very closely behind the scenes to help the Environmental Protection Agency and its Inspector General develop new protocols to share information about employee misconduct matters. As a result of this work, both the EPA and IG have now advised the committee that they have implemented new processes to take more timely and fair disciplinary actions. They have begun holding bi-weekly meetings to share information about investigations. They are now communicating more frequently about administrative actions, and they are now sharing with agency managers reports of investigation in specific cases. And so, Mr. Chairman, as I close, I have here a joint letter that was sent to the committee from both the EPA and the IG's office detailing some of these improvements, and I ask for unanimous consent that it be entered in the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
I believe this letter shows what we can do if we work hard with the agencies and the investigators to improve their procedures. This type of work does not always get the big headlines, but it makes a real difference. I look forward to hearing from Director Allison and to Ms. Book about whether this procedure or something similar would help TSA as well. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. We'll hold the record open for 5 legislative days for any members who would like to submit a written statement. We'll now recognize the first and only panel today. We're pleased to welcome Mr. Roderick Allison. He's the Director of Office of Law Enforcement for the Federal Air Marshal Service at the Transportation Security Administration at the Department of Homeland Security. We also want to thank Mr. Allison for his 13 years of service in the United States Army, his work in the 7th Special Forces Group at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, among one of the highlights. We thank you, sir, for your service to our country and appreciate you being here with us today. We also have Ms. Heather Book, Assistant Administrator of the Office of Personal Responsibility at the Transportation Security Administration at the Department of Homeland Security. We welcome you both. Pursuant to committee rules, all witnesses are to be sworn before they testify. So if you please rise and raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. If you may be seated and let the record reflect that the witnesses both answered in the affirmative. We'll give you great latitude on the time of your opening statement. It would be remiss if your opening statement did not include, although it might be impromptu, some details of the 2 incidents in particular, the individuals out of Chicago as well as the other incident were evidently schedules were manipulated and whatnot. We're inevitably going to ask about those, but we would appreciate it if you would proactively take some additional time and address those as well. With that, Director Allison, you are now recognized.
Good afternoon, Chairman Chaffetz, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today to testify about the Federal Air Marshal Service. Our mission at FAMS is to detect, deter, and defeat criminal or terrorist activities against our transportation systems. We perform our core mission by deploying Federal Air Marshals on United States flag aircraft throughout the world, 365 days a year, utilizing a concept of operations that aligns with TSA's risk-based security strategy. Federal Air Marshals are law enforcement officers who receive specialized training to prepare them for the challenges associated with a very difficult working environment. Our officers operate at 30,000 feet in restricted space and have no backup to call upon. The service is unique in its ability to remain flexible and to rapidly deploy hundreds of law enforcement officers in response to specific evolving threats within the transportation domain around the world. I can assure you that the vast majority of Federal Marshals are quiet counterterrorism professionals working diligently every day on thousands of flights a year to protect the traveling public and ensuring our transportation systems are safe. There have been recent media reports on misconduct by FAMS. I can assure you that Administrator Neffinger finds misconduct at any level completely unacceptable. I wholeheartedly share his philosophy and have made it crystal clear to every employee there is no tolerance for misconduct. All personnel are very well aware of our high standards and expectations of professionalism, and that as Federal law enforcement professionals, they are held to a higher standard both on duty and off duty. I share the committee's expectation that we as government employees must demonstrate the highest level of integrity and conform to a rigorous code of conduct. As you know, I cannot comment on pending investigations. However, I can tell you that all allegations of misconduct are immediately referred to TSA's Office of Inspection or the DHS Office of Inspector General for a thorough, impartial, and independent investigation. The results of these investigations are reported to TSA's Office of Professional Responsibility. Investigative findings that are substantiated by these independent investigations may result in severe consequences up to and including removal from federal service. And please note that the discipline decisions are independently administered as well by Assistant Administrator Heather Book's staff at the Office of Professional Responsibility, who's here today. Since becoming the FAM's director in June of 2014, I have made strong value-based leadership, workforce engagement, enhancing communication, and promoting the highest level of professionalism and integrity in the Air Marshal Service my top priorities. Over the past 16 months, I have personally visited all 22 Federal Air Marshal field offices, and together with the Deputy Director, we have held 50 town hall meetings throughout the FAM's organization. I also use multiple means of communication to ensure open dialogue access at all levels of the workforce. I encourage the use of the Director's email box, personally engage with both the Federal Air Marshal Advisory Council and Supervisory Air Marshal Advisory Council. I utilize an ombudsman and aggressively communicate the availability of support and assistance programs that are available to all employees. Since the vast majority of our employees are dedicated professionals who conduct themselves in an exemplary manner each and every day, I've initiated a number of programs to recognize, award, and thank them. This outreach has provided me the opportunity to highlight and express my appreciation for the outstanding work that is being accomplished by so many. During initial training, all Federal Marshals are provided multiple courses regarding integrity, accountability, and professionalism. We have expanded our in-service training to a variety of topics, including resiliency, critical incident response, and most recently completed mandatory alcohol awareness training. All TSA employees are subject to recurrent annual vetting and on an annual basis certify that they understand and will abide by TSA's employee responsibility and code of conduct. Additionally, FAMs are subject to security clearance determinations and appointments to national security critical sensitive positions following strict adherence to the federally established adjudication guidelines. Nonetheless, these proactive efforts won't prevent all misconduct. There are a handful of employees who may betray the trust bestowed upon them. In these cases, both headquarters and field leaders must and will act appropriately, quickly, and decisively. During my visits, I've stressed to supervisors their responsibility to lead. They are expected to mentor subordinates and to manage minor issues at the local level. I've empowered them to lead by example and foster a law enforcement environment that promotes integrity and accountability. I believe that strong leadership reduces the likelihood of misconduct and performance issues. We continue to provide our workforce with the resources and specialized support required to carry out the mission. As such, FAMS maintains a number of medical programs to include a comprehensive annual physical, health and fitness program, and employee assistance resources. The FAMS medical section is staffed with a physician and other full-time medical professionals who are available to FAMS personnel at any time. FAMS recognizes the value of these programs as our mission is demanding both physically and mentally. We will continue to make these and other employee assistance programs available to our personnel. The Federal Marshal Service is a strong counterterrorism element in the security TSA provides to the traveling public. We take our mission seriously, and our workforce is dedicated to preventing and disrupting both criminal and terrorist acts aboard aircraft within the transportation domain. Our workforce is comprised of exceptional men and women who execute a difficult mission. I am deeply honored to lead this team of counterterrorism professionals, and our nation should be proud of the work they do each and every day to support the goal of securing our transportation systems. I appreciate this committee's interest in our mission as we execute our sworn duties, which are vital to the security of the traveling public. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Ms. Book, you're now recognized.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Chaffetz, Ranking Member Cummings, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Our highest priority at TSA is accomplishing the important mission to protect the nation's transportation systems and to ensure freedom of movement for legitimate travel and commerce. Our new administrator, Mr. Peter Neffinger, has committed to ensuring that we continue to pursue our vision of an effective, high-performing counterterrorism organization. We are a security organization, and every member of our team must be focused on this core mission. Most importantly, our new administrator has committed to leading with values that define our agency: integrity, innovation, and team spirit, and he has asked each of our employees to do so as well. Every day, TSA's 57,000 employees serve to ensure the security of our nation's transportation networks, interacting with the traveling public millions of times each day. We screen passengers and baggage at nearly 450 airports across the United States. We deploy Federal Air Marshals on U.S. aircraft worldwide to ensure the safe conduct of flights on high-risk routes and to cover special mission needs. We vet 14 million passenger reservations and 13 million transportation workers against the terrorist watch list every week. The totality of our efforts facilitate safe, secure air travel for 1.8 million people per day. In doing so, the vast, overwhelming majority of our workforce serves with honor and integrity. Our success depends upon the dedication and professionalism of our workforce. Public service is a public trust, demanding adherence to the highest ethical and personal standards of conduct. Because TSA employees interact directly with the public and hold sensitive security positions, their conduct is held to the strictest standards. When a TSA employee fails to live up to those standards, he or she violates that trust and undermines the honorable work that others do, keeping the traveling public safe. For all these reasons, we have no tolerance for misconduct or criminal activity in the workplace. When allegations or incidents of misconduct arise, they are investigated by the DHS Office of Inspector General or by TSA's Office of Inspection, an independent office that reports directly to the TSA Administrator and Deputy Administrator. Office of Inspection reviews allegations and reports them to DHS Office of Inspector General. When OIG elects not to handle the case, Office of Inspection conducts the investigation. The Office of Inspection also conducts independent oversight inspections of operational programs, procedures, and policies. These inspections assess compliance and afford employees an opportunity to discuss allegations of misconduct in a confidential setting. To promote consistency, timeliness, and accountability in the disciplinary process, TSA created the Office of Professional Responsibility, or OPR, the office that I lead. OPR adjudicates all allegations of misconduct involving senior-level employees and law enforcement personnel, including the Federal Air Marshals. OPR officials also review all reports of investigation from the OIG, regardless of the pay grade or seniority of the employee. OPR has promoted greater transparency and consistency in the entire TSA disciplinary system by creating a table of offenses and penalties. The table provides ranges of penalties for each type of offense and guides the decisions of officials both at OPR and in the field. The Office of Professional Responsibility has a trained staff dedicated to adjudicating disciplinary matters involving senior-level employees and law enforcement personnel, including the Federal Air Marshals. OPR affords employees due process and holds them accountable to TSA's high standard of conduct. Having a dedicated staff of adjudicators who serve as independent proposing and deciding officials has reduced the time between the issuance of the resolution proposal notice and the decision letter. Through use of the dedicated staff and the table of offenses and penalties, OPR has taken strong actions and has maintained a consistent approach to accountability. OPR has partnered with the Office of Law Enforcement, Federal Air Marshal Service to educate the workforce in the field regarding disciplinary process and the table of offenses and penalties. The goal of our joint outreach efforts is to motivate positive behavior and to deter or prevent misconduct by providing notice of the possible penalty and consequence. Additionally, OPR has supported Director Allison's Alcohol Awareness Initiative by amending policy to require Federal Air Marshals to abstain from consuming or being under the influence of alcohol for a minimum of 10 hours before mission report time. For the offense of driving a privately owned vehicle off-duty while intoxicated, the table of offenses and penalty requires a 30-day suspension for law enforcement employees. Because TSA, through my Office of Professional Responsibility, has taken an aggressive approach in drafting solid proposals and decision letters in disciplinary matters, and through the support of the Office of Chief Counsel, OPR has had strong cases in the event of litigation. Ethics and integrity are at the core of who we are, as a counterterrorism agency. It is up to all of us to always show the highest level of professionalism and perform our work with honor and pride. As we strive to continue strengthening transportation security and improving the overall travel experience for all Americans, we always bear in mind that the success of our mission depends on the conduct of our people. The freedom to travel is fundamental to our American way of life, and TSA is fully committed to ensuring that the public can do so securely. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm pleased to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Florida, the subcommittee chairman for transportation, but also the former chairman of the full Transportation Committee in the House of Representatives, Mr. Micah, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling this important hearing, reviewing some of the performance of the Federal Air Marshal Service. Unfortunately, the FAM's, Federal Air Marshal Service, has had a recent history of a whole host of misconduct by on a whole host of occasions. We have had the gun purchase scandal, Air Marshal scheduling scandal and allegations, cronyism and discrimination issues, Air Marshals dependent on drugs and alcohol. And you were brought in, Mr. Director Ellison, when, last year?
Yes, sir, June
Kind of
2014.
clean things up. And I think the chairman's been pretty complimentary in some of your efforts in trying to put some of that behind us, institute some corrective measures, and also hold people accountable. And part of this hearing was also to highlight your successes. Unfortunately, the allegations and the problems still continue. As recently as, I'm told, September 3rd, you informed the committee of an ongoing investigation. This is a new one into solicitation of prostitutes. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's an ongoing investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
In March, TSA began investigating a workers' compensation fraud case in the Chicago FAM's office. This is allegedly an air marshal claim that he hurt his shoulder. However, I guess there's some videos and some other evidence disputing his claim. So we have that case pending too. Is that investigation underway or continuing?
Yes, sir, that is an active investigation.
Well, we set up, when we set up all the security measures after 9/11, we tried to have a layered system. And we first dramatically expanded the air marshals. There were only a handful on the eve of 9/11. And we think that's an important element in a layered system. We've gone from 16,500 screeners to some 46,000 screeners and almost 60,000 TSA employees. That's about right, isn't it, Ms. Book?
Yes.
46,000, yeah. Back in 2007, we had 30,000 screeners, and this was a leaked report. It was in CNN, and it said there's a 75% failure rate in the screeners' ability to detect explosive devices and other devices that could do harm. Then most recently, we've had, I guess, USA Today had a leaked report. There's about a 95% failure rate. These are anecdotal to press reports. Are you familiar, Mr. Ellison and Ms. Book, with those reports?
Yes, sir,
Yeah.
we're all familiar with those reports.
We've built a system. We've increased the number of personnel from 16 to 30,000 for screeners, then to 46,000 currently for screeners. It's gotten worse rather than better. We've had a history of misconduct and problems with FAM, which is a backup. Fortunately, we have thousands of airline pilots who have gone all the way to New Mexico, wherever they're trained to arm themselves and also protect us. But the layered system that FAMS is so important to fill part of that layer, unfortunately still has some serious problems. Is that correct, Mr. Ellison?
I prefer to look at those as challenges and opportunities, Mr. Congressman.
Well, it's not an opportunity when the reports we get. Now, it's nice that you come to us and tell us about it, but it looks like we still have problems. I haven't gotten into scheduling, and I'd like you to provide the committee with some information that could be part of the record, either kept classified. I want to know about overseas flights and how many of those are covered. I'm told you're not covering those overseas flights. Almost every instance, Richard Reed, the liquid bombers, the diaper bomber, all of these people coming, trying to do us harm are coming in or involve international flights, and you're not properly scheduling folks. So I think that should be reported back to the committee, how many people you have on this and the problems that are not being aired publicly about our most at-risk flights, and then our backup system with air marshals not operating the way it should. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Members are advised that we have 3 votes on the floor. The voting has started. It's intention to recognize Ms. Watson-Coleman of New Jersey for her 5 minutes. We will then go into recess. After the votes, we will reconvene. That will be no sooner than 3 p.m. and likely a little bit after that. So if members need to depart to get to the floor, I would advise that they do so. We'll now recognize Ms. Watson-Coleman of New Jersey for 5 minutes and then recess from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but use your influence with the majority so they don't close out the voting before I get there. Thank you for holding this.
You're on your own. Good luck with that one.
Well, Mr. Allison and Ms. Booker, I want to get to the issue of the day here, which has to do with these allegations and what your agency does when these allegations arise. So I'd like to explore with you a little bit about the authority that the agency has when there are allegations of misconduct, okay? First of all, do these air marshals have to have security clearances?
Yes, Ms. Congressman. These positions are designated as national security critical sensitive positions, which are subject to top secret clearances.
So if there are allegations of a serious breach of conduct, can the agency sort of suspend a clearance on an individual?
Yes, Congresswoman, the adjudication guidelines of which you're referring, there are 13 criteria. Allegiance to the United States, foreign influence, foreign preference, financial responsibility or irresponsibility, criminality, and so forth. So when these allegations occur, these are actually referred to for investigation first and foremost. And as these investigations are ongoing, if these investigators, who are very good, by the way, they actually refer these to the Office of Security. They can, in turn, take a look at that statement or activity and decide if it hinges upon one of the 13 criteria that I identify, either on a continual basis, right, or a one-time sort of egregious incident. From that, they will make or could make an unfavorable determination of whether that individual will be have his clearance suspended or even petition for a revoke. These are two-step processes, and if it's a suspension, the agency, the Federal Marshal Service, will move forward with an indefinite suspension without pay up until the time that this issue is resolved.
Well, I was going to ask you about that issue about without pay, but let me understand this. So at the point that the allegation is made, what has to take place before a decision is made that even before the investigation is thoroughly conducted, that the security clearance is suspended, that the individual is not working in that capacity? Does that happen before the investigation is completed, or do you have to go through the investigation in order to do that?
Congresswoman, it could happen before. It depends upon the facts and circumstances of the case. Most of the times, these are admissions, right? Sometimes it
mean
won't be done based just on an allegation. We need a little bit more than that. But typically, they're based upon admissions or a strong set of facts and circumstances.
So the allegations that are a part of this hearing and the reason for this hearing, do they represent the kinds of allegations that would cause the agency to take away the security clearance, put the individual's status in suspension, and/or also stop the pay?
We found out about this in June, and by mid-July, these individuals were all suspended without pay.
So in your experience and with your knowledge, do you believe that you have all the authority that you need to deal with these issues as they come to your attention, or is there something that's lacking that you need that would help you facilitate the resolution of these issues, dealing with these infractions?
Congresswoman, I was asked that same question by Ranking Member Cummings last night, and what I told them was, if we're waiting on discipline to be the only measure in which we can mold and shape a model workplace, our arms are going to be tired from taking off all these people's heads.
Yeah.
So what I believe, and the road that we have embarked upon, is bringing to bear all the resources that we have within the organization: performance management, policy, training, enforcement. Discipline's one of them. The personal security aspect, and then good old-fashioned leadership.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm very impressed with your testimony and about your being proactive, about your trying to create an environment of professionalism, how you're both thanking as well as training, as well as holding accountable. So I thank you for answering the questions. I thank you for my time, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank the gentlewoman. As I said previously, we're going to go into recess. We appreciate your patience and understanding. The committee will reconvene at the conclusion of those votes, but we'll say no sooner than 3 minutes after the top of the hour, or 10 minutes after the top of the hour. We stand in recess until then.